My name is Jillian Perrick, but my friends call me Jill. I'm a lover of all things orange chocolate. Think One Tree Hill is way better than the OC. And as a person who stutters, I strive to empower women with invisible disabilities to go after their dreams, just like I did. I'm a mindset coach specializing in imposter syndrome, helping women overcome their inner imposter with my master's in psychology and my certification in neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, EFT tapping, and time techniques. And this is the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. This podcast is for you if you're an entrepreneurial woman trying to navigate the online space with a lot of passion and a lot of uncertainty. If you feel like your ideas are unoriginal, that your message isn't necessary or important, or like you're a complete and total fraud, then you've come to the right place. This podcast will take you from imposter to empowered with ninja-like brain hacks, easy to implement strategies, and uplifting real talk to make you feel like everything you want is in reach. Find me on Instagram at YourCoachJill to let me know how much you loved this episode once you're done listening. Time to kick that inner imposter to the curb. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast with me, Jill Perrick. And as you're listening to this, I am in the training of my master's level NLP certification with Yes Supply. I got certified through Yes Supply at the practitioner level back in January of 2020, so exactly a year ago as you're listening to this. So I got my practitioner level, which is the first level of NLP, time techniques, EFT tapping, and hypnosis, but now I'm doing the master's level exactly a year later, and this is just going to be able to take my clients to that deeper level of transformation and something that can be offered after you're done the master practitioner is breakthrough days. So I'm really excited to offer this because if you've ever done an NLP breakthrough session with me, or if you've seen me talk about it on my stories at Your Coach Jill on Instagram, you will see how big of a transformative shift people have had from doing those sessions. So imagine doing a breakthrough day / weekend where we tackle an area in your life that you want to do a complete re-identification of, a complete transformation over that area in your life. We get into values, we do a ton of amazing techniques to help you completely reprogram what you need to reprogram in the span of 2 days. And I am so excited to offer this after doing this master's level. So I'm going to put the waitlist in the link in my show notes. And I am so excited for you to get on that waitlist because I'm going to be offering it for $2,000 off for a limited number of people because they are so big and so transformative. I'm only doing them once a month, so one person a month, and it's just going to be fucking amazing. And I'm so excited, and this is going to replace my one-to-one coaching because as a generator, I just felt very drained and exhausted over the past year. So in 2020, I took on one-to-one clients, I did groups, all that stuff, and I realized that groups are where I really thrive, or intensive sessions like the NLP breakthrough sessions. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the link in my show notes and check that out because that is going to be an amazing transformative container, and I can't wait to serve you inside of it. So as we are talking about radical transformation, I had this thought as I was in the gym and I was working out, and I was thinking about all the things I had to do that day, like all the business stuff I had to do. I was still working my full-time job, so I was just on my lunch break, and I was thinking about Christmas and all the stuff that I had to do because as I'm recording this, it's the beginning of December. But as I was thinking all about this, I was thinking about how I sound really conceited when I say this, but I was thinking just about how proud I was of myself, that I have always taken fucking radical responsibility for my life. Now, Gala Darling talks about radical self-love, and I'm talking about radical responsibility, and radical responsibility is what has gotten me to where I am when it comes to my business, when it comes to my life. And here's the thing, radical responsibility is literally taking responsibility for everything that you can because you know that you are at cause for everything that happens to you. And people get their back up when they are told that they are at cause for things. So I learned cause and effect from my NLP certification through Yes Supply. And the concept is basically that you are always at cause for the stuff that happens to you in your life and what you make happen. And that puts you in the place of responsibility instead of being in the position of effect where you are just having things happen to you, and that is how you perceive it. And again, this can be really scary for some people to even think about because their back immediately gets up. They're like, what do you mean I'm responsible for everything that's ever happened to me? I had this terrible thing happen and this happened and this happened. And this is not to negate any traumatic events or anything that happened to you as a child. Absolutely not. Like, I work with people who have had some really significant trauma, and I never negate that. I never say, whoa, that's because it was your fault. Like, this is not about placing blame, and it's not about making you ever feel bad for a circumstance happening. But there comes a point where you start to get sick of your own shit and you start to think, if I was responsible for this, how can I respond? You see, shitty things are going to happen. So you're going to have a shitty client or something really traumatic is going to happen, like my childhood home burnt down at the end of October in 2020, and our cat passed away, and that is 100% something that happened to me. But I took radical responsibility by responding to it. I dealt with my emotions. I went to my therapy appointments. I worked with my coach. I journaled. I cried. I moved through it, and I took radical responsibility for my healing. I didn't say, why did this happen to me? I'm a good person. This means that only shitty things are going to come my way. I literally wrote in my journal the day before the house burnt down. It's actually so fucking morbid, but like, I wrote like, bad things aren't going to happen. And then the next day the house burnt down. And when I read that back, I was like, oh my God, like, I could really take this in a direction that most people would, in terms of being like, well, I knew something terrible was going to happen and here it goes, it happened. But instead, I chose to see what bright side I could find, and I chose to take radical responsibility for my healing. And I think that this is the mood going into 2021. I'm going to mess that up so many times because I want to say 2020, but now we have to say 2021, which just sounds like a mouthful, doesn't it? But anyways, so in 2021, I want you to go into the year taking radical responsibility for everything in your life and watch how your life changes. I work full time. I have a social calendar. I have friends that I hang out with. I have my partner. I make time for him. I run a full-fledged coaching business, a 6-figure coaching business. I have a team behind me. I have a lot of responsibilities on my plate. And yes, there are times when I really want to be like, oh my God, I want my ego to kind of take over and be like, oh, I do everything and nobody appreciates me and I'm exhausted and blah, blah, blah. And you've probably heard me say 1,400 fucking times on this podcast that I have a full-time job. Like, yes, Jill, we get it. I have a full-time job. But like, I'm just saying, like, in addition to my coaching business, I also work full-time. And that means that I have to be really smart with my time. I have to manage my energy. I have to do this and I have to do that. And I could make all of that mean that like I am hustling and nobody appreciates me and oh, it gets lonely at the top and all this bullshit. But instead, if I want to create the life that I want, I have to take radical responsibility for everything, even if I feel righteous or justified in blaming something on somebody else. Even if that means taking the high road when I really just want to fucking stick it to someone, you know? Like, it means that I am trying to move into that highest version of myself, and I'm not perfect. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to fuck things up. But taking radical responsibility for my life has changed my life. It led me to, from making $12,000 in 2019 to making over $100,000. Like, I think it's going to be like $140,000 by the end of the year. I had a goal for 200, but that's okay. I think that we should still set big goals, and the universe is conspiring, and I know I'm gonna hit over 200 next year, so I'm not worried about it. And by next year, I mean this year as you're listening to it. But I take radical responsibility for that, because if I can take responsibility for the shit that went wrong and the stuff that happened, I can take responsibility for the amazing things that happened. And this is like a little bit of a teaching too when it comes to imposter syndrome, because if you've been listening to me for a while now, you know that a symptom of imposter syndrome is not being able to relish in your success or relish in your accomplishments or feel really good about what you've achieved. And sometimes that is because you have not taken radical responsibility for the shit that has gone wrong, because it is easy to play the victim. It is easy for me to sit here and say, because I have a speech impediment, I haven't achieved half of what I would really want to, and it's tore me down, it's given me anxiety. And there are times where I really do feel like that, where I do want to hide in a hole and I don't want to talk to anybody, when I'm so embarrassed if something happened, where I think to myself, how am I ever going to be successful? I have this big roadblock. But on most days, I am taking responsibility for it and being like, you know what? Fuck it. There are so many people in this world that have disabilities or things that are hard for them, and they don't let it stop them. So why should I? How about I just modify whatever I'm doing to suit me, and I will fucking figure it out along the way. It's just because I feel really passionate about this. And when I had the idea, I was just like, oh my God, yes. That's what it is. It's like taking responsibility. It is cause and effect to a whole other level. Taking responsibility for everything, even the shitty stuff, even stuff that you technically shouldn't because it was somebody else's fault or whatever. Who gives a fuck? You are going to deal with it now how you can, because you know that your highest self would do that. Your highest self deserves better. Your highest self does not let her ego take over. Your highest self does not play the victim and feel good about it. Your highest self has bigger plans for you. And when you don't take radical responsibility for your stuff, you expect things to happen to you. But what if you could make things happen for you? I am not naive to the fact that, like, yes, I have manifested this year. I have learned about universal laws and I've implemented so much stuff into my life. And I've also taken a ton of inspired action. I have done the work. I have put my head down. I figured out what has worked for me, what hasn't worked for me, hence the conversation that we were having about phasing out one-to-one coaching, because I just realized, you know what, this is draining me. This is draining my energy. How can I take responsibility for this? I've learned so much from it, and now I'm going to move into this new season. And radical responsibility helps solve all my problems, because when I hit up against a mindset thing or when I hit up against a strategy thing, I know that I'm resourceful and I know that I'll figure it out. I lean on my coach. I lean on my teachings. I do the things that I need to do to move through the problem instead of just ignoring it or getting over it or telling myself this is stopping me. Because in reality, the only limitation that you are hitting up against, obviously there's other limitations when it comes to like bigger things, but usually when it comes to your business, limitations are in your head, especially when it comes to imposter syndrome and thinking like, oh, I can't get a client, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. And I think that for some people, radical responsibility can be difficult, because if I really think about when it's been hard is when, like, whenever something happens to me, like a shitty client or a negative experience or whatever, like I really do feel righteous or justified to tell them off or to be like, you shouldn't be dealing with this shit or whatever. And I just take it as a nudge that like something needs to be improved, whether that's a process, whether that's an SOP, whether that's a way that I'm functioning, whether it's a boundary I'm not setting. I always come back to what can I do about it? Because even in the most helpless of situations, there is always something that you can do if not for somebody else or for your business, for yourself. As I said, like when the house burned down, it was really, really traumatic. It still is. And I had to think about, what can I do for myself? And that was like heal. That was cry when I need to, take time off when I need to. I didn't do that with the launch, but that's another podcast episode, a couple episodes back. But I was working with a coach and she was like, do you just want time off? And I was like, no, like I need to move through this. And I like allowed myself to feel my feelings and cry when I needed to and be sad while also being super happy at the same time because stuff was going so good for my business. You know what I mean? Like I allow myself to feel my range of emotions, but I don't allow myself to then self-sabotage as a result. It's not about negating your emotions. It's not about negating the stuff that happens to you or the traumatic stuff or significant stuff that happens to you. It's taking responsibility, radical responsibility for what you can control and what you can move through and can work on. And again, this is not to guilt yourself or shame yourself if you want to release guilt and shame. We do that in an NLP breakthrough session and an NLP breakthrough day. But anyways, if you have guilt or shame around that stuff, then that is something you can easily release with NLP. But this isn't to make you feel bad. It's to make you realize that, like, holy fuck, things really do change when you take responsibility for yourself. I used to love playing the victim and everything was hard for me and people were just negative towards me and whatever, or like even with being an empath, like I would say that I am an empath, but I also don't strongly identify with a ton of things. Like I really love human design, but I'm not like through and through a generator. Like I feel like there are certain things that I really do strongly identify with, but I don't like to put myself in a box. But when it comes to people being like, I just absorb the energy of others and like I can't help it, it means that I have to like be alone 24/7 or whatever like crux that some people like to fall on when they put themselves in a box. I'm always like, but what can you do so you can do the work you need to do, so you can build your business, so you can take responsibility for whatever you're experiencing and turn it into something that you can use and something that is good for you. So again, I always mean to do shorter episodes, but I just went on a rant. So let me know how you feel about this episode. I really just feel like I needed to say this, and not only for you guys, but for me as well, that 2021 is the vibe of radical responsibility and taking responsibility for the things that you're doing, the things that are happening to you that you can respond to, and knowing that you have control over how you function and how your business is and how you are. And that is the beauty of running your own business and being a boss ass bitch. So I love you guys. Talk to you later. Thanks so much for listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. Leave a review so I can continue to make amazing free content for you guys. And speaking of free content, you can go to the link in my show notes and download my free 30-day journaling prompt workbook to help you overcome your inner imposter and attract the abundance you deserve. And finally, screenshot this episode and share it to your Instagram story, tagging me at YourCoachJill so I can share it on my page. See you next time.